Yeah, buddy, you know we had to do it. Episode 3 of Modern Retro FPS Games Review. This is your one-stop shop for all your boomer shootery needs right here on this channel. Episode 1 we reviewed 8 titles, in Episode 2 we reviewed 7, and in Episode 3 we shall review 9 more. Who says I don't give you content? Yeah, it's kind of amazing to see that boomer shooters are getting such a strong resurgence, and I personally am all for it. Just before we get into it though, I wanted to shill for a magazine I've backed on Kickstarter, and I'm a monthly Patreon of on E1M1 magazine. Links below. Sadly, this segment is not sponsored, but Jake, sponsor me, you coward. Love you really. And so, on with the video. For the first title on today's episode, you're getting a sort of 2-for-1, in the shape of Hellbound and Hellbound Survival Mode. Hellbound is a recent title released onto Steam at the beginning of August this year. Developed by S.C.A.R Studios and published by Nimble Giant Entertainment, Hellbound gives itself the tagline of a 90s FPS 30 years later. Upon loading the game up, I'm greeted by a splash screen that reads, "This game is being made like it was in the 90s. Some people may find it too difficult." Ha, kids these days, am I right? Now, I'm all for self-aware jokes, but let's see if it holds up to its claim. Right off the bat, the soundtrack slaps. The music was created by David LaVille, and the instruments, guitar, and bass is recorded by Christian Adagio. And so these guys have done a really good job in creating the soundtrack for this game. It really is good. There aren't that many enemies to fight, which really is a bit disappointing, as variety is the spice of life, which, in a retro FPS games, the lack of variety can occasionally be a bit detrimental. So you have these grunt-type enemies that all carry various weapons that you can equip in the game. There are these enemies, they're called Hell Knights, they're the humanoid zombie-type enemies, they're all called Hell Knights. Thanks, Steam trading cards. They basically try to bum rush you with a club, and others that will try to pick you off with a rifle. Then you have these demons that honestly look like a cross between the Deathclaws from Fallout and the demons from the Scooby-Doo movie. Now the game will ramp up its difficulty in 2 ways, either by spamming you with various enemies or by activating a checkpoint and not healing you up fully when you respawn. Dick move, game. Dick move. And the boss battles are nothing really to write home about, either being just big enemies. Sure, they look fucking menacing as all hell, but the boss fights are generic and kinda nothing new. You'll shoot at the big boss enemy will spawn in some grunts for you to shoot at. You'll mash and mangle them in gruesome and grotesque ways, and it's back to shooting the big boss enemy again. Pretty vanilla stuff, really. Of course, you have the typical assortment of weapons from your fists, because you're a badass, duh, a machine gun assault rifle combo, depending on whether or not you hold the fire button rather than conservatively tap it, a shotgun, a bazooka rocket launcher, and a chain gun. You play as Hellgore, a pretty badass name to go by if I do say so myself, and you have been resurrected by the humans to exact vengeance on those who wronged you. As you progress, Hellgore will spout some pretty often cheesy one-liners, but I don't hate it. I find it kind of charming, really, in like a baby's first swear word kind of way. While this game does have a story, it's told to you in a few lines of text during loading screens. This method of storytelling is appreciated, as it's not super intrusive, but it's there if you care, so unless you are paying full attention, you'll forget there is a story to this game at all. I mean, for a few hours of shooting demons, it's everything it needs to be and more, but I feel like at the same time there is so much wasted potential here. Hellbound also has a survival mode that it bundles in with the full game, but is also released for free on Steam as a shareware teaser demo type deal. It's kind of neat to see some publishers still do the whole shareware thing, really. I found myself really enjoying the game's survival mode, however. Then again, like Devil Daggers and Crossbow Bloodlight and COD Zombies, it's a wave-based survival game mode where you shoot bad guys and try to survive as long as possible. Then at the end of it all, the game tells you your score, and puts you in the global rank so you can see the snotty little tryhard that placed one spot above you and just feel the smug sense of satisfaction oozing from them with every second. No, just me? Oh, okay. But yes, as I've mentioned, Hellbound does its job well. There are a few improvements that could be made, sure, but overall it's a solid short shooter campaign that will bring you a bit of fun if you get past the slightly unforgiving difficulty curve. But yeah, this is quite cookie-cutter content from a 90s shooter, but its soundtrack does slap, so that's great. One thing that gave me a good chuckle, however, is there are gravestones dedicated to none other than Dave Oshry of New Blood fame, and the way more successful than me G-Man lives, the Aussie with a shotgun. Amazingly, no references to Civvy though, which took me as a surprise. So yeah, Hellbound makes quite a good go of retro FPS, but I feel like it hasn't quite lived up to its expectations fully. Sorry S.C.A.R Studios, it's a good game, but it could be a bit better for a few hours of shooty fun. It does what it needs to well. Another word for Hellbound is damned, which is fitting for this game. However, Hellbound retails on Steam for £11.39, which should be $15.25 or €12.82. So that is Hellbound covered. Up next on the retro FPS list, Godz. Now, Godz is a retro FPS game in the style of Wolfenstein 3D. Developed by Vlambeer, it centers around the world of Nuclear Throne, more specifically YV, or Young Venus, of whom's design is a reference to the Eye of Providence, the eye from the Illuminati. So basically, young Venus has been arrested in Godz, and he basically decides to escape the jail of this hotel, which is bizarrely located on Venus. and owned by a record label owner who happens to be the god of guns. You keeping up with this? Yeah? Cool. I love Vlambeer games because they are all insane but oddly charming. Sadly though, Vlambeer closed their doors this September, on the 1st, exactly 10 years after they opened. You will be missed. I'll pour one out for lost homies. Goddamn Rona closing down game studios. But yes, this is a simple shooter that replicates the original Wolfenstein 3D from May 1992. There's only one small thing that really irritates me about this game, and that's if you press the escape key, you know, the standard pause key across most games, you should get a pause menu, but no, it kicks you back out to the main menu, and if you press escape again, you'll be booted back to the desktop. Sort of annoying, especially seeing as I was on a roll and I just wanted to change the sensitivity. Cheers, game. Like Wolfenstein, you can only aim side to side, no vertical aiming, just horizontal. But unlike Wolfenstein, you can actually strafe, making the shooting much less of a chore. I really appreciate this touch. So yes, while this game may look like a 90s FPS, it handles more like a modern iteration, with strafing controls and the like. Sure, the lack of vertical aiming is a bit of an annoyance, but to be fair, keeping the aiming mechanics simple like this makes the game a hell of a lot simpler and more enjoyable. It's a lot like Simpleton's Mulch, to be consumed, not really thought about in its moment-to-moment gameplay. It's a good game to switch off to if you're tired. Vlambeer themselves said they designed the enemies in order to make battles exciting, fast and slightly unpredictable. All the enemies have specific roles and are all designed to work well together in any situation. So, Vlambeer hired some freelancers to design the music and a few enemy designs. Vlambeer said that when hiring freelancers, it's best to give total creative control. They also hired a few composers to create some bizarre rap-esque tracks to really bring to life the world of rap, guns and craziness. Vlambeer admits that their earlier levels in Godz were not as good as they made the later levels, as they designed all the levels chronologically, and as a result they learnt a lot about level design from this type of game as they progressed. Vlambeer, however, also admitted they were juggling too many projects at once, and Godz was released right at the beginning of a cloning controversy where Vlambeer's Radical Fishing, a game for the iOS, which was cloned and rushed to the App Store by some San Francisco company. This is said to have been a wholly demoralizing effect on Vlambeer. This company, blatantly stealing Vlambeer's game and passing it off as one of their own, had put numerous projects on hold. Those projects were Serious Sam the Random Encounter, Super Cratebox iOS, and the aforementioned Godz. So basically, after court proceedings, they found themselves swamped with unfinished projects and down a decent sum of money from the whole ordeal, thus leading them to close up shop. Vlambeer also claims that developing Godz made them listen to Tupac and adopt a lot of slang terms in their text to one another. This is a pretty cool little story to come out of game development. But yeah, Godz was truly a casualty of intellectual theft of another game, but honestly, the game is still really enjoyable to pick up and play, even if only for a few minutes. It makes me sad thinking that Vlambeer aren't around anymore. I loved Nuclear Throne, and they will remain strong in my memory for many years to come. Godz is still a really fun shooter, and I guess if speedrunning is your thing, you can try to beat all the levels as rapidly as possible, like in the original Doom or Wolfenstein games. The best part is that Godz doesn't cost anything either. It released on Steam on the 9th of December last year for free. Zilch, nada, now, so you ain't gotta pay nothing for it. Next up, S.C.A.R. Sadly, S.C.A.R has been put on a hiatus due to the fact that the studio behind it is only 6 employees all working from home, and the Rona has made it really hard for them. Simply put, they ran out of money. Yet what there is on Steam ready to purchase is a fun little romp for a few levels, using a pretty standard arsenal of weapons including a pistol, shotgun and rocket launcher. It would appear as though ammo is plentiful, and therefore, so are the enemies. You will get overwhelmed a lot with enemies, but that's fine. It can be stressful, but also really fun. Now, this game does something somewhat unique. It allows you to use a grappling hook tool, which makes for a very unique way of traversing levels, sort of like a retro Spider-Man, but with guns. The official Discord for S.C.A.R has an announcement that reads as follows. Greetings all, Jimmy Frost here, your community manager. We would write something sooner or later, needn't you worry, but since lots of people asked, we ought to answer you, so everyone knows what is happening for us. We are a pretty small team consisting of 6 people, and we tried to make this game as best as possible, as soon as possible. In order for us to do that, certain funds needed to be met, from our publisher, and of course, from our sales from the release. Sadly, there were not enough, and during this hard time of quarantine and lockdown, our small team could not handle working lots of hours each day, with no funding, despite the fact we were from our own homes. We are friends, we love games, but we also have responsibilities that need to be met. Hope you all understand, our team's future is unknown yet, and as for S.C.A.R, it will remain in its current state until further notice from other people that are willing to assist on this. Thanks for all your support, and thanks for being too eager to see what S.C.A.R would unfold. It is really sad to hear about game studios that are trying their hardest to make a total passion project come into money troubles. I hope the development team behind S.C.A.R can find a publisher or obtain the funds they need to continue working on S.C.A.R. It's definitely a game with potential. So as well as the grappling hook, you can jump really high and do air dashes a la Doom. The game looks authentic to the retro shooter vibe and plays very well on a variety of hardware. Its low requirements aren't going to hinder very many people. The game also has a pretty good soundtrack. I can't find out who did the music for the game, so sorry to leave you uncredited, but Savage Studios, I wish you all the best and I hope you can overcome the financial difficulties you find yourselves in. So S.C.A.R in its current form is definitely an experience worth checking out. I can't comment too much on the game as it is incomplete, but there is enough content there to justify its low asking price. Just don't be expecting a fully polished and complete game. There's enough content there to warrant it being on sale, though through several levels, and it's a great showcase of the developer's talents. It retails on Steam for the very low asking price of £3.99, $5.32 or €4.46, which more than makes up for its incomplete nature. While I wouldn't normally recommend purchasing an incomplete game, these guys do really need the financial aid currently, so let's help them in their time of need, yeah? So on to the next game, Bedlam. Right off the bat, Bedlam is an awesome game. Everything about it, from the premise to the voice acting, is just beautiful. I want more games to be like this. This is just pure, unfiltered crack. Now, Bedlam is a video game about a lady who gets trapped in a VR game, Heather, the protagonist who goes by the gamertag Athena, the goddess of war in Greek mythology. Pretty neat. She finds herself trapped inside a 90s shooter called Starfire, the game she mentions playing as a young girl on her brother's computer. So now she is in the game and she finds out the pain of getting injured isn't just a game, so you have to team up with the American Marines in the game. The issue is her character is a cyborg, funnily a male cyborg, which she expresses disgust at. However, the cyborgs and Americans are at war. Typical America, always wanting to go to war with everybody. Yeah, so the plot is like something from a rejected Small Soldiers script, and fuck off, that is a great movie. But Heather is a Scot, and while I am English and should therefore harbour a dislike to the Scots, I love the accent. Heather's Scottish accent appears to be a Glaswegian accent, which has a lot more of a harmonic sound to it than other localised dialects from Scotland. But yes, you'll control Heather on a quest to escape the game and get back to reality, fighting many typical 90s FPS enemies. There was one point where I walked through this glitchy apparition in the game that transported me into some kind of training arena, very reminiscent of Quake or Unreal. It was a deathmatch, but obviously, as it's to further the story, all players were in fact AI controlled. They were voiced by some young teenagers, though in typical gamer fashion. I'm using heavy quotations there. They proceed to joke about Heather being a girl and then using the typical lingo of 12-year-old gamers, words like owned, wrecked, etc. The thing is, though, as you progress through Starfire, you'll find yourself dropped into other games, such as a World War II shooter, yet you still have all your alien weapons from Starfire, along with all the World War II weapons you'll find, then proceed into other subgenres of shooter. The graphics proceed to get better as you progress, allowing the Unity engine to flourish under this game. The game is really like an interactive museum exhibition into the history of shooters. Heather and the other characters go on to reference many real-world games, which is a bit odd, but ho hey. They reference being stuck in Half-Life, Grand Theft Auto 4, Halo. The game is full of in-jokes for long-time gamers. It would make you wonder what type of experience you could have had if you were trapped in those games too, rather than just some budget knockoff Call of Duty and Quake. The game does reuse a few assets, such as its health pickups, completely glossing over the fact that later Call of Duty titles have regenerating health. I guess, though, that's because a lot of the Call of Duty devs were former Medal of Honor devs that did use the old way of healing, that it isn't too bad, but just a little quality of life improvement that I couldn't help but notice, especially if we're going through the timeline of first-person shooters. So yes, the game is really cool in its premise, but it does fall short of highlighting the fact that you are advancing through games in terms of technology and design. It doesn't include any set pieces, which, well, to its credit as a retro shooter is fine. Given what it's trying to do, I think it should include at least one. Now, the enemy AI is another area in which the game does falter slightly. Well, in the earlier levels that are meant to be from the 90s, it's fine and a bit of an in-joke. The AI doesn't get any better as you progress, though, which makes for a pretty one-note game. So I really love this title, but, you know, they missed out on so much potential to branch into other genres explored as an FPS as well as shooters. Like, how about an RPG, or a level where you're in some kind of COD Zombies level, or hell, even a sports title, or an RPG like Skyrim. Hell, go to it where you have a level where you have to shotgun creepers from Minecraft. There's so much endless potential that you could do with a game like this. Like, the possibilities for something like that are literally endless. I would have really loved to have seen a level where you're in like a medieval castle with a shotgun, wreaking havoc on knights, priests, and the undead in dungeons, something along the lines of Ash in the Army of Darkness. You know, this is my boomstick. I know Dave Ostrey could create something like that. Dave, please. Please, Dave, please. Please.
Yeah. All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. See this? This is my boomstick. It's a 12-gauge double-barreled Remington. S.Smart's top of the line. Shop smart. Shop S.Smart. You got that?
Now, sadly, Bedlam is no longer for sale on Steam, as it was pulled from sale on the platform at the request of the publisher, Red Bedlam, for reasons I can't find anything online about why it was removed, but as far as we know, it was nothing sinister. All I know for certain is that Red Bedlam are no more. Luckily, you can still obtain the game via sites such as G2A or Kingwin. G2A and Kingwin are sites I wouldn't normally endorse, but when talking about abandonware, I guess it's okay, seeing as the publisher has made it nigh impossible to give them money for the product. Personally, I got my copy from G2A for about $3.08. In decimals, the crown is £2.31, or for the Europeans, €2.58-ish, depending on how G2A does its conversions. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yes, Bedlam kind of reminds me of the storylines of Time Splitters in its sense of diving between time periods. I really like Time Splitters. It's a shame that game isn't available to get anywhere in itself. There was a project to make a fan remake of it, but that was shut down, and it's unknown as to whether or not that game's ever going to see the light of day again. So it would be nice to see if another studio could do something like this, because these types of games are really awesome. Moving on swiftly to Suffer. I enjoyed my time with Suffer quite a lot. It plays well, the movement is fluid and the shooting is fun, however at certain distances it feels like your guns won't reach, which is fine I guess, but it isn't communicated anywhere in the game about weapon range, so I'm not sure if it's a feature or a bug. Suffer takes place in an authoritarian city that, judging by the posters of the wartime, would lead me to assume it was somewhere in Britain, but the radio is a speech of an American, presumably a president, so I'm unsure as to where this is actually set. But given what's happening in the world with lockdowns and the police's massive overreach in recent months, this game's plot isn't too far from the truth. There are posters and billboards with slogans such as "Debt is good" and "Buy more now" sprawled across them like you are looking at the world of John Carpenter's They Live. Now when you first load this game up, one of the first things you'll notice is the scan lines, which are quite distracting at first. After a while playing, your eyes will adjust, but I chose to turn them off in the settings as, my god, it felt like I was on the verge of having a seizure, like that episode of The Simpsons where they went to Japan.
Who's up for some exploring? Yeah, I'm still checking out Japanese TV. Isn't this that cartoon that causes seizures? Bard, what are you doing? Hey, what the?
All right.
I'll be right back.
Woo!
I've just noticed I'm getting a lot of video memes in here. But yeah, aside from that, this game feels a little bit like Dishonored in that your character is essentially a ninja that runs from one rooftop to another with a katana and whatever firearms you find strewn around levels, hacking and slashing the military police and weird alien testicle-looking flying things. The game is very fun in this regard and it feels very smooth. You can dash from ledge to ledge and double jump to reach some of the hard to get places. The game even has level end screens like Doom telling you how well you did in the level, how quickly you completed the level, what percentage of the enemies you killed, and whether or not you found the Anarchy collectibles. The enemies are well rounded for a shooter, though the cops are easy to dispatch of. They have very hit-scan weapons. The flying testicles, that are actually called floating guys, though they don't look it, they shoot rockets. They obviously do more damage, but as they are slower firing projectiles you have a chance to dodge them, and you will come up against zombies later on. Yeah, so the zombies are like slow, shambling melee enemies that you can either slash with your sword or blast the brains all over the wall with your firearms. The cops shoot fast and they blend into the very pixely backgrounds, making it damn hard to find out where you're getting shot from. And the eyes, or flying testicles as I like to call them, are just irritating flying enemies that shoot you. They're just really irritating. But yes, this game sets itself apart from other retro shooters and it takes place mostly on rooftops as opposed to hallways, corridors and the like of its inspirations. With the dashing and double jumping it really sets itself apart and makes for interesting gameplay. But yes, the game does look like an acid trip, but it's really enjoyable to play through, although it does begin to get a bit repetitive as you progress. But everything from the game's Orwellian level designs to the gameplay is very fluid and engaging. Hell, you can even press E to throw up a middle finger to say some cheesy one-liners in true anarchist fashion. Still though, for a game created by one man, yes, this was a solo project, for a game created by one man, then this is very impressive indeed. I'm very, very intrigued to see what you come up with next, my dude. This is a really good game. Now the next one, Monument. Monument is a weird one to cover as I'm not sure if I like it or if I despise it, honestly. It's a very love-hate type of thing with me. Sure, it fits the bill of a retro FPS game in all of its design, but its textures look flat and muddy. Its enemies, while interesting, I had trouble understanding what they were meant to be until I looked at the achievements for the game. The game's arsenal is quite good, it's used for revolver, double-barreled shotgun, assault rifle, and more. The game utilises keys to lock certain pathways, meaning you'll have to backtrack a fair amount. The game got middlingly positive reviews upon its release in 2015, and up until January 2020 it was lying dormant. However, in January, the devs released quite a big patch for the game, fixing a lot of the issues that the game had in its reviews. The game has allegedly been rewritten from scratch since launching, allowing faster gameplay and improving performance. They added in a teleport gun, which I am yet to come across. They've made new maps from scratch, but as I mentioned earlier, the flat-ass textures make everything look muddy and uninspired. They've added in a strafe jump so you can dart along a level like you're playing Quake, which is always enjoyable in a retro shooter. They've added new weapons too that, again, the devlog uses the term made from scratch, like, yes, we get it, you are creating things, you're a developer, that's what you do. The most interesting addition though is the donor station, where you can trade some of your health points for ammo. And I will give it credit that the soundtrack is a total headbanger. Just make sure you haven't got your headphones set to full when you load the game up, as it will take you by surprise, and unless of course you want tinnitus, you best keep the volume low and then set it to the volume you want. I was playing it through my speakers and the dog was asleep on my bed before I loaded it up and he shat himself and jumped up startled. Sorry Max, mate. As you progress through the game, you attain a sort of long rifle sniper and plasma gun. Ammo for all weapons is more than plentiful, so you should never really have a problem using them. I did come across this power-up and stupid me wasn't recording, but temporarily it was invincibility. But it makes your entire screen black and white, making it very hard to see what you were doing or where you were going because of the texture design, especially as you get coloured keycards in this game, red, yellow and blue, etc. Luckily the power-up is only temporary, but for that minute or so you will have no fun travelling around the map, seeing as you can't see colours. Now there are secrets to find, often at the end of little parkour puzzles, which is fine and all par for the course, it's just they are spread few and far between really, and there's not many secret areas that you can come across. The rewards for finding these secrets are pretty lackluster as well, it's normally just a little bit of extra armor or a little bit of health. Obviously having the level design centered around keys means a lot of backtracking, but there is no map, so you have to totally rely on memory to proceed, which while not a complaint is slightly annoying to have to contend with. One big complaint I have is that a lot of the times the enemy placement feels very cheap in its attempts to ambush the player. Too many times you'll pick up an item or a key only to turn around and have half the enemies in the level spawn along the path out there. I get that it's to challenge the player, and again that's fine, but many of these enemies take several shots to down. I find myself sitting back and picking them off slowly with the long rifle or machine gun, which I don't get the feeling is how the game's meant to be played, but still. However, all my little nitpicks mean diddly squat, as the game is very cheap, retailing at only £1.69, which is roughly $2.26 or €1.87, making it the cheapest title of this episode. So its faults can be excused in this case, as yet again the dev is criminally undercharging for the work they put in. It's a problem I see all too often in these retro shooters. The games tend to clock in at less than £15 most of the time, and for the amount of passion and work they put in, I feel like they are selling themselves a bit short a lot of the time. I will commend them, however, for not doing the AAA mentality and overcharging for their games, you know, the whole $60 and more for a season pass, blah blah blah. So yeah, credit to where credit's due. Next up, Prodeus. Now Prodeus is one of the newer titles that comes to the Retro FPS collection, and it is glorious. So I was given entry to the early playtest build of the game, but while I was writing the script, for which I've slept on for a little while, the full thing released like 3 weeks ago, so I had to scrap everything I'd written and start again. Having been developed by Bounding Box Software and being published by Humble Games, Prodeus is made with Unity. The game has been designed with sprite-based bodies, props and enemies. But all I can say to start this portion of the review off is that if Doom was seen as the work of the devil in the 90s, and if Prodeus would have been released back then, it would have caused your evangelical wine aunt to have a seizure at the amount of blood you spill in this game. You spill blood by the bucket load. Looking at the walls and floors after you clear a room, it's like that scene in The Boys where Huey detonates the explosive up Translucent's arse. Just a thick layer of red paste decorating every surface it touches. The game is beautifully smooth, its retro 3D aesthetic, massively over-the-top visual effects, and so many enemies for you to rip and tear through. I said it when I tried the playtest, and this game feels what Doom 3 should have been. Not to say Doom 3 is a bad game, it accomplished what it set out to do very well, only people hate it because it doesn't have Quake's movement system. That's my take on it anyway. But yes, the boomer shooter community love this game, with only 28 of the total reviews being negative from a pool of over 1,300 Steam reviews. The game feels like an old Duke Nukem, but if he was dropped into the boots of the Doomslayer. It is total FPS fan service, and I love it. Because this game is a total power fantasy, it's just sheer carnage. No other game in the genre let me enter a room and just decorate it with my enemy's innards in such a satisfying way. The best thing is that while Prodeus offers a beautiful campaign that isn't too short, it also offers a suite of player-created levels using its built-in level editor. The community are a bunch of creative bastards as well. There was one perfectly recreating E1M1 from Doom 1. While I haven't tried out any of the community levels yet, as I'm having too much fun playing the base campaign, I promise I will play them, perhaps on stream one day. But in many ways, this game is beastly. It's a love letter to Doom from the time just after Doom 2 and before Doom 3. This game is just oozing personality and Doom vibes from the get-go. Ion Fury was the true build-ending successor to Duke Nukem. Prodeus is the true build-ending successor to Doom. It is that good. And while I will defend Doom 3, I wouldn't hate it if they retconned that game and said Prodeus was the real. I mean, it's not hard to see where the Doom inspiration is. You know, space colony, presumably on Mars, high-tech fancy looks, very much like Doom's Mars moon base, full of demonic aliens to slaughter that you as the sole arbiter of righteous slaughter have to contend with. You know, it's very Doom. But all the guns in this game serve a purpose. The starting pistol isn't just some weak throwaway sidearm to be forgotten about when you find bigger guns, as its secondary fire burst shot makes you feel like an unstoppable force of nature. But this game totals more guns than the most recent entry in the Doom franchise. Its visuals are something else, and giving you an option to choose between full 3D modeled enemies or sprite-based design. A level editor, music by the legendary Andrew Hulshult, who has lent his talents to Brutal Doom, Dusk, Quake Champions, and Medieval, Doom Eternal's first DLC, so he's a grizzled veteran in the industry. There's a huge community in the boomer shooter crowd, and the sheer positive reaction and reception by almost everybody in this community is just a feat to behold in and of itself. This game is the game. So if you want some brutal demon slaying, then pick up Prodeus, grab a shotgun and remove some heads from torsos, all in the name of all things holy. Prodeus clocks in on Steam at £19.49, $26 too, or €21.60, making it by far and away the most expensive title I've covered in this episode, but trust me when I say every penny or cent is worth it. Seriously, honestly, what a time to be alive when creations like this are coming to the market. Seeing as I wasn't around during the original Doom's release or for any of the actual boomer shooters so fondly remembered by the community, it's nice that I get to experience something as awesome as this for the first time. Next up is Perilous Warp. Perilous Warp was released on October the 20th, 2020 by Prodeus Softworks. So actually, I lied when I said Prodeus was the most recent release. Perilous Warp is. But Perilous Warp emulates games such as Quake 2 in its design whilst being a slower paced game, raveling side-strafing hordes of enemies who are traversing through tight narrow corridors engaging in shootouts with enemies of all kinds. The ranged enemies can be a bit hit-scanny when fighting them. If you're tactical about it, you can kick their ass no problems. So the game looks old school, but it does many things in its graphical design rather modernistically. Things such as corpses not despawning after they die, staying in the map as a near constant reminder of how much ass you kick, dismembered limbs strewn about the halls you've ran down mercifully, risking your foes to shreds. The game's advanced lighting can really give up a dark, ominous tone, but that is somewhat juxtaposed by the fact you have a big fuck-off shotgun. Sadly, Perilous Warp is a very short game, only really taking a few hours to run through completely if you care about the secrets and secondary paths. If you know where you are going and you aren't playing medium or hard, then you can possibly do it even quicker. You explore the world on foot, travelling through corridors and halls of, yep, you guessed it, another space station. You get about 7 weapons ranging from your assault rifle, knife, shotgun and more. They are all different in their own little way, and most but not all can be upgraded at weapon upgrade stations. The game is very atmospheric in its design, it just falters in its attempt to create engaging gunplay. There's no dodging lasers, the enemies don't really give any sort of audible call to indicate they're being hit. It just feels very cheap. The gunplay is stiff and a little unpolished. I quickly noticed the normal shotgun sucks. When you upgrade it, its secondary fire feels amazing, but it goes through ammo at double the speed. The game has a decent soundtrack, though only a few tracks are really memorable. It uses the volatile engine, which serves its game very well as it can engage environments smoothly. So its small variety of weapons are alright, but a bit underwhelming and occasionally underpowered. Blowing enemies' limbs off is hella satisfying. The enemies, however, are very samey and forgettable. They all look very similar, and bar 1 or 2 different kinds of attacks they can do, they are just very cookie cutter. The game is pretty short, more of a blessing than a curse, around 2 hours maybe, although Crysis is a small company, so the short campaign length is forgivable. But yes, Perilous Warp is a decent retro FPS that, while accomplishes what it sets out to do, I can't help but feel like it's a bit rough around the edges. It's a decent title, but nothing really to write home about. Perilous Warp's campaign or story mode is decent for a bit of short shooter fun, but there is no replay value, so really, it's just a very much one and done type of game. It's listed on Steam for the low asking price of £11.39, $15.16, or €9.43. Paradox Vector. You know how earlier I joked about how I wanted Jake the Voice Par to sponsor me on behalf of E1M1? Yeah, well, Jake hasn't actually gone ahead and sponsored me. Yet. Wink wink. He has, however, added a promo tab into the Discord where developers can ask content creators in the E1M1 community, such as myself, to review their retro FPS titles. Well, one nice developer by the name of MK Schmidt has given me a review copy for free. Thank you, kind sir. And the first game I was asked to test out and review was Paradox Vector, which reimagined a gaming space where vector graphics never became stale. It's very trippy to look at and can at times be a bit confusing to navigate, especially in vents, but, you know, that might just be me.
Look, here's the thing.
Fine. Listen,
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded. In that...
The game is beautiful though. My only concern is the lack of a tutorial. I'm okay with that being part of the game's allure and everything to do with the whole no hand-holding or easy modes that many retro shooters strive for. But if I don't know how to shoot this netting out of a doorway, I'm not going to proceed very far. It has a tutorial in telling you how to traverse the map and how to jump and things. It just misses a few important things that the player perhaps should know. Yes, it's a beautiful game, but it's not to be played with tired eyes, as I found it oddly hypnotic. Running through, I found that despite me obtaining the red keycard, I came to numerous red gates that I could not open. Is it a bug or am I just being dense? I really don't know. Another thing I ran into when testing this game out is the spider drones that populate the map are very, very fast. Again, is this a bug or a feature? One thing to the game's credit is it offers tons of secrets hidden away behind locked doors and destructible vents for you to find, making the whole game take a slower, more exploratory pace. I find that very refreshing. The game was programmed on the aging 3D game studio, which means the game is surprisingly well optimized for any computer of today and can properly run on a toaster or pregnancy test like Doom has recently been doing. But the game has an open level layout, meaning you'll be travelling from level to level in search of these paradox triangles, which your character hopes will hopefully get her home, as she has no recollection of how she got here. The story is told to you in drips, with your character slowly regaining her memory. The game has numerous puzzles, usually consisting of switches, which can present a real challenge, or at least for my smooth brain. But levels, tunnels may take you through a bizarre perspective, so you can end up walking on the ceiling or up 2 floors, despite the tunnel seemingly only heading downward, just like the paintings of MC Escher, of whom is Dutch, and is really called Moritz Cornelius Escher. He is not a sick MC, sadly. The combat is simple and challenging, mostly due to some hit-scanning turret enemies, but there isn't much combat on offer. It's still really fun and a beautifully mesmerizing game. It describes itself not only as a puzzle game, but as an action game set in a puzzling environment. It is unique indeed. The only game I ever played like it is 2006 Prey with its Portals. Just to note that apparently AMD graphics cards don't play nice with this title, but I don't think that's entirely true, as I own an RX 5700 XT that seemed to run fine. Once again, thank you to MK Schmidt who gave me a review copy of this game for the video. Much appreciated, my dude. Yeah, the game seems really promising, it just needs a little bit of polish. The game debuted in October, so it hasn't been out long, and the game's full of potential. I can't wait to see what comes of it. I haven't seen many games go for the vector graphics approach, so it's really refreshing and unique. I quite like it. That seems to be all I have for you this episode of Boomer Shooter Reviews here on the PapaScho Show. Thank you if you're still watching, you're utter legends. If you've seen anything of Realms Deep this year, you'll know there's plenty more boomery goodness on the way, so keep it right here for all coverage on these amazing titles. If you've been intrigued by any of the titles I have showcased here, the links to all the games will be listed in the description, as well as the Discord I have joined forces with, owned by a streaming friend, Wild Carl. I have since ended my Discord and asked everyone to migrate over there to grow the community. E1M1's Discord will be there, and my Twitter. So if anyone wants to check out E1M1 or reach out to me to review a game you're working on, come along, I don't bite, unless you want me to. Please remember to do all the pishy stuff like subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed it, it lets me know that you want more, and share this video any way you can. My first video in the series really took off, and I want people to know it is a series, as the second video hasn't done quite as well. I've also set up my Streamlabs, so I now stream to Twitch occasionally, so give me a follow there if you ever want to hang out and chat shit about games. Thank you very much for watching. This first episode of this series has smashed over 4,000 views, something I never thought possible of my formerly dying channel. I love you loads. I really don't know if it's worth mentioning at this stage, but I have set up a Patreon account. I'll have to have a really good think about the tiered rewards for anyone interested in it, but it's there in the meantime. The proceeds from Patreon will go to buy more games to cover on the channel.
How doing you are, boys and girls? Make sure to PapaScho you subscribe, or have to do this to you. I will.